Welcome, everyone. Good morning. So welcome to Advocacy as a Career, a Calling and a Practice. Today's webinar is brought to you by Antioch University, New England, and the Association for Environmental Studies and Sciences. And this is the last webinar in our Environmental Advocacy webinar series. I'm Clara Fang. I'm the organizer of the Environmental Advocacy webinar series. I'm also a graduate assistant for the Center for Climate Preparedness and Community Resilience here at Antioch, and a PhD candidate. So a few logistical items today. Everyone should be connected via audio broadcast upon entering the webinar. You do not need to call in and you are automatically muted. The presentation will be recorded and posted to the Antioch CCPCR website within 1 week, and you'll receive a link. Please submit any questions you have for the presenters in the Q&A section. If you're having trouble with any aspect of the broadcast, use the chat section to message the host directly. So a few announcements. To accompany the series, we have also organized a special issue on environmental advocacy for the Journal of Environmental Studies and Sciences. This issue will be coming out in June. And to give you a preview, my article is available out on the website with a link here. Antioch does a series of online courses focused on the fundamentals of climate change resilience. So you can enroll for graduate credit on these online courses. Our next one is Climate Impacts Public Health, March 7th through April 3rd. And now I will introduce our speakers. Lisa Yi Litzenberg is a certified career coach and president of Green Career Advisor, helping people find their career niche and secure their dream green jobs. Lisa has a degree in natural resource management from the University of Michigan and spent 12 years working for the National Wildlife Federation in various endangered species and water quality advocacy roles. Prior to launching her green coaching business in 2016, Lisa spent 10 years leading the career services at the University of Michigan for environmental graduate students. In her spare time, Lisa is an avid soccer player and does volunteer climate advocacy work. Dr. Beth Offenbacher is the founder and CEO of Waterford Inc., a consulting firm that specializes in executive and leadership coaching. She co-designed and leads the Green Career Workshops for the Global Nonprofit Leaders in Energy, a 4,500 plus member organization of clean energy and sustainability professionals in the US and more than 100 countries. She also serves as Director of Training and Development for Leaders in Energy. So welcome, Lisa and Beth, and Lisa will go first.
So today I'm going to be, of course, giving a quick introduction. I'll be talking about what is an advocacy career, and I would like to hear from some of you too on your thoughts on that. I know we have some professionals in the field as well as students. I will be giving some examples. I think that can be very helpful to see some examples of advocacy careers that are out there. I'll be talking about skills that are needed for working in the advocacy arena and how to get them as well. And then switching up, I'll be talking a little bit about how you could be doing advocacy work as a lifelong passion, as I'm sure many of us are doing. And then I'll be closing out with some advocacy career resources. Okay. So just a little bit about my background. As Clara said, I'm president of Green Career Advisor. It's a small company that I founded in 2016 to help people find and secure their dream green jobs, basically. So I've been doing that for about 5 years now. Prior to that, I led the Graduate Environmental and Sustainability Career Services at the University of Michigan School for Environment and Sustainability. So I've had a lot of experience working with diverse students from different backgrounds and different disciplines on finding careers in the conservation, environmental, and sustainability arenas, including environmental advocacy careers. And then prior to that, I spent 12 years working for the National Wildlife Federation in various roles. for 12 years. And I think I'd like to talk a little bit more about my National Wildlife Federation experience, because I think it's quite relevant here in terms of the types of advocacy work that I've done in my career. So starting off, I was an endangered species campus organizer for the Midwest region in 12 different states. I would go and travel to 12 different states. And my job was to educate students in colleges across the Midwest and also the Northeast to educate them about endangered species conservation issues. And we had a big campaign to work on protecting endangered species by working to serve as a backstop against federal legislative attacks on the Endangered Species Act. So we were teaching people about how they could insert themselves into the process and do things like media campaigns, letters to the editor, meeting with members of Congress, etc. I'll talk more about this in a bit. But that was my first job out of college, doing grassroots organizing on endangered species legislative issues. After that, I spent a couple, 2-3 years working as a grassroots organizer on another campaign to protect Lake Superior. For those of you that might not be familiar with the Great Lakes, they're very important global resources on our planet. The Great Lakes contain something like 1/5 of the world's fresh surface water on this planet. And so very important work that the National Wildlife Federation's Great Lakes office works on to protect those Great Lakes. And I worked on a particular project to protect Lake Superior. That work involved a lot of grassroots organizing work as well. I worked with federal government agencies in the US and Canada, and also tribal governments as well, and then state governments, and then also grassroots conservation organizations. So this is very interesting. We worked with a huge network of small environmental conservation groups spread out throughout Lake Superior on the US and Canadian sides that were each kind of isolated, doing their own kind of project work on protecting Lake Superior from this or that pollution issue. And we helped to help them on those issues, but also helped bring everyone together, sort of a big coalition of groups to work together on some of the larger picture strategy issues for protecting Lake Superior's water and biodiversity. After that, I went on to lead NWF's work with 4 state affiliates. So I was a regional organizer, less grassroots organizing work. I did some of that, but also did leadership development work, and then helping strengthen our state affiliate groups, bringing greater diversity to their boards, things like that. And then my very last role at National Wildlife Federation was at leading the Great Lakes Wolf Recovery Program for National Wildlife Federation. So that was a really exciting job. Some of that was advocacy work, but a lot of it was education, environmental education work, trying to educate especially landowners who were most affected by wolf depredations of their livestock, and helping them to find strategies so that they could peacefully coexist with wolves. So that's a bit about my background. So I thought it would be important to kind of define somewhat what an environmental advocacy career is, right? So based on my experience, working in the environmental advocacy arena, I define environmental advocacy careers as one that where you're working on a policy changes to typically it's in the nonprofit arena, but certainly can be in other sectors. Working for companies, there are a lot of people working for companies that are doing advocacy and policy work, so that can be in a lot of different realms. If there's time, I would love to hear maybe if people are willing to share a 1-sentence description about if you're currently in an advocacy career, what is it that you're doing? And then I'd be particularly interested to hear what issues that you're focusing on or hope to be focusing on if you're a student and aspiring to that. I don't know if that's something Clara can see, if people share a few thoughts and get a couple examples.
If people can share directly with Lisa, that would be great.
So Joanne is, what did I see here? Student in local food advocacy. So I know we have a lot of students out there, but I also know we have a lot of professionals out there as well, seeing a bunch more coming in. Movie production, speaking, university teaching, UNFCCC, and IOM work on endangered nations, Mike Roman. Carrie Rose Pacheco, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, student working on plastic-free campus advocacy. So some great examples. Thank you for sharing that. Just wanted to hear from some of you on what all of you are working on. We can go to the next slide. So next, I'd like to highlight just a handful of examples of careers in environmental advocacy. I think that can be helpful. So the first example is one, I started to tell you more about this, my endangered species organizer role that I had as my first job out of college for National Wildlife Federation. While I highlight some of these roles, I want to point out that you can click on the names of the people that are highlighted, so you can, and I encourage this as for all of you exploring careers in environmental advocacy or wanting to find out more about work of others, to look at LinkedIn profiles. In most of these cases, I'm going to put a link in the slides here, and you'll get a copy of the presentation as well, but you'll be able to click on that and see more about the educational backgrounds, career pathways, experience, and skill sets of people working in these fields. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, that can be very enlightening. So my background, I said, is in natural resource management at University of Michigan. And then I just wanted to highlight, I had a couple of unique experiences for the students. It really helps to do internships or volunteer work. So in my case, what I believe helped me get this role in endangered species organizing work was an internship I did with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, working at a national wildlife refuge. It was a fisheries internship, but kind of showed my passion for conservation. And then I also did volunteer work. I was an editorial intern with an endangered species publication that was managed out of the University of Michigan School for Environment and Sustainability. Another example, this is a person, Katie Westfall. She's director of ocean climate strategies at EDF. And so she does some tremendous work on conservation on marine fisheries species. She has her Master of Environmental Science and Management in Coastal Marine Resources Management, and she also has a BA in Political Science. And again, you can click on her link to learn more about her. This one's more of a broad, bigger picture perspective of environmental attorneys as a career. So environmental advocacy, certainly law is a big part of that. And this article was tremendously inspiring to me to see how some environmental attorneys were making a huge difference in the environmental arena at a very difficult time politically. In some cases, lawsuits are one tool in the toolbox for environmental advocacy, but I will say from my personal firsthand experience that tremendous opportunities to make a difference. So if you are someone who has a knack for policy, public speaking, learning environmental laws, being persuasive, an environmental attorney role has the opportunity to make huge difference. So this article, I encourage you to take a look at it in Rolling Stone, read it when you can. Drew Caputo is the Vice President of Litigation for Lands, Wildlife, and Oceans at Earth Justice. And you can, again, click on his profile to see more about his background. It's actually an article, I think, that links to his profile. And then just wanted to point out, so for example, Earth Justice sued the administration well over 100 times during Trump's presidency. And in 17 cases where a major decision was made, Earth Justice won on 16 of those. And so for many, and this is true for many of the other organizations as well that were working on litigation. And so this is one avenue, but a very effective one. And in this case, it was serving as a backstop to help protect against bad policies that were going against environmental and conservation initiatives. In other cases, it might be, in other administrations, it could be very pioneering work to lead efforts to make progressive changes. So just wanted to point that out. Another example would be Nataki Osborne-Jelks. She's someone I knew briefly. She and I both worked at National Wildlife Federation ages ago. She has gone on to do a lot of exciting and interesting things since then. She's a scholar activist for environmental justice. She's an assistant professor of environmental health sciences at Spelman College. So she has an impressive background. So, PhD in public health, a Master of Public Health, and a BS in chemistry. And so some of the work that Nataki does, certainly she's doing a lot in her role as a professor, as a teacher. That is, I'll say that I was inspired to get involved in conservation work from a professor sitting in a classroom. In my undergraduate days, I was taking a class. I just want to share this story. I was sitting in a classroom working on learning about tropical rainforest destruction and conservation, and learned about the high rate of loss of biodiversity from these very important ecosystems in our world. And it was in that class, because of that professor, that I decided to devote my whole career to conservation. So being a teacher is a form, in my opinion, of being an advocate for the environment. And really, that's really important, to be able to create that first spark, because people will not be active or take action on issues unless they're moved to do so. So Nataki does some work. She serves also on the side as a National Environmental Justice Advisory Council member, and she's co-founder, board chair of the West Atlanta Watershed Alliance, which was originally started to do grassroots activist work on some environmental justice issues related to halting discriminatory wastewater practices in West Atlanta. And now they've evolved to do more work on green space preservation and using that, encouraging communities to use those green spaces. Okay, next. Then my last example is Catherine Prater-Bomi. She is a student that graduated from Michigan that I knew quite well. This is a former role that she had, but this is more, I just want to highlight some policy and communications type roles and advocacy. So she is was the communications manager on US policy for the Nature Conservancy, and you can see her background: natural resource management, master's, and a Bachelor of Science in Journalism and Political Science. So next, I would like to talk about the skills, right, that are needed to work an environmental advocacy career. So the first one I think that's most important is your passion, right, for making a difference. What is your spark? What will get you out every day to be excited doing the work that you're doing? So ways to obtain that is really just really listening to yourself and, trying to experience as many things as you can. I would say pay attention to environmental issues in the classes that you take. So for example, that was what sparked my interest. Pay attention to issues in the news that really spark your interest or make you want to work on those. Do internships, get those hands-on experience to see if you really like that type of work. Create an independent project. Perhaps there's a lot of students that I worked with that were creative about getting these experiences, creating independent projects, volunteering for an organization, traveling, and most importantly, listening to your heart. The next skill for environmental advocacy roles, of course, having a good grasp of environmental policies and how to affect changes with those policies, that is critical to an environmental advocacy career. So certainly encourage you to take classes on environmental policy, possibly even consider majoring in an environmental policy major. Doing your own research on environmental policies of interest, finding projects where you get to do that, write a case study report. Internships again and volunteer work are also other ways. Another important skill as you move up the ladder, the career ladder, and you take on higher level of roles in the environmental advocacy arena, it can be really important to understand how to develop a policy campaign from start to finish. So like, this policy knowledge will be very important, but how do you put together the big picture strategy to, what does the win look like? What policies are you trying to change? What are the steps along the way? Who are you targeting? How can you make those changes? So a few ways that you can obtain that experience or that knowledge. Green Corps is a very respected field school for environmental organizing. That's a great way to gain experience. That program is something like a year-long paid program where they throw you into some environmental advocacy work. So you learn, you get thrown in the fire and you learn as you go. And that's sometimes the best way of learning. So that school is very immersive in terms of giving you that experience. And then they help you after you finish your year out. I understand that they help you find permanent roles for employment in the grassroots organizing fields. I would say start with entry-level grassroots organizing roles and learn the ropes in order to be able to move up to those policy campaign leadership roles, possibly interning with a legislator to learn how policies are made. Fundraising, always very important, especially with nonprofits. So being able to raise funds to do the work that you're doing is very important. So any opportunity you have to learn how to write a grant, any opportunities you have to work to engage and recruit corporate and individual donors can be tremendously helpful. So you might, even as a student leader with an environmental group on your campus, you can be doing work to raise funds through applications and different things like that. You can be doing perhaps a development internship. I've been seeing more and more of those opportunities where you serve as an intern to help write grants or research grant opportunities for nonprofits. Taking an online course on fundraising is another one. Media skills, important, writing press releases, hosting press conferences, pitching a story idea, radio, TV, interviews, social media. I did a lot of this in my work. Again, Green Corps training might be helpful. Internships that involve working with the media, and then doing this again if you're a student, finding opportunities to reach out to local and campus media to get some experience there. And then strong communication skills, public speaking and writing, taking journalism classes, writing for your campus paper, participating in a local Toastmasters chapter will help you become a more effective public speaker. And next one, I want to make sure we get through these. Coalition building. So that is basically how do you get a disparate group of people to work together on a common issue to support your cause. So any opportunities you have to do that, volunteer work, internships again. Next one. Just as I wrap up talking about advocacy work as a lifelong passion. So for some of you, you may be doing other types of careers. Perhaps it's not realistic for you to do full-time advocacy work. Completely understandable. You might have a different environmental career or a different career altogether. But I'm a true believer that you can develop this into a lifelong passion and find ways in your spare time to do the work as an environmental advocate. So I just want to highlight very quickly, Climate Reality Leadership Corps. They do trainings. Former Vice President Al Gore leads these trainings. I participated in one last year and spent, I think it was 9 days, 2 hours in the evenings to take this training, and now I'm trained to give presentations. And so this is something I'm very passionate about. There's some trainings coming up, so take a look at this. April 22 is the next one coming up for the US. There's also virtual trainings in Latin America and a global training coming up in October. So pay attention to that. Next one. And then other opportunities could be to serve on boards. That's an excellent way. I served on nonprofit board, the Alliance for the Great Lakes, for 6 years. So there are excellent ways to do that. And then just some resources. I won't go into each of these. You'll get the copy of the slide presentation. I wanted to highlight this slide will show you where to find green jobs, green advocacy type jobs. And the next slide are just some miscellaneous resources that I think will be tremendously helpful. I mentioned Green Corps a couple of times, some articles on how to advocate, to be an effective environmental advocate. I have some green career resources that may be helpful for you that I've made free to everyone during these difficult times. So cover letter templates, all of that. And then a nice piece on 35 environmental organizations and nonprofits for a sustainable future. So these are ones you might target to do internships and reach out to and get a sense of environmental advocacy organizations out there. And then lastly, this is how to contact me. I will say that the two ways that I help people. So if you're seeking a career in environmental advocacy or other green careers, the two ways I help people are helping them find a fit. So a lot of people will come to me to understand, here's my background, here's what I want to do, how do I get there, or what are some careers that would be a good fit for me? I help people with that. And then secondly, the nitty-gritty of the job search itself, how to be more effective with resumes, cover letters, interviews, etc. So you can get in touch with me. So I want to make sure Beth has enough time, so thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Really like that breakdown of all the skills. So now we have Beth.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening, and I'm thrilled to be here with each of you colleagues. I really enjoy this work. We have an amazing community, and I am so glad that you are committed to doing this work as well. Today, I'm going to focus a little bit on environmental policy careers as both a calling and a practice. And so this work really is all about you. It's all around your area of focus. And so I'm really curious to hear from you as we dive in a little bit more. And I know Lisa explored this a little bit with you in the chat feature, but we have a quick poll we'd like to ask you to participate, to tell us a little bit about what aspect of environmental policy most interests you. So if we could bring that up and just pause for a moment and ask people to respond. And it's hard to pick just one, I know. Yes, Jonathan, thank you so much. Yes, all of the above, for sure. One thing I'll say while people are responding, this field is so fascinating. I have worked in several dimensions of the sustainability field. So I want to encourage you to also be aware that you might be beginning in one of these discrete areas, and then it's very easy to bridge to a focus in another area that just somehow connects to that very naturally. And so this field, there's a lot of need, as you know. And so to find ways that you can build on your skills and broaden your experience and expertise is something that I think makes it very exciting. Great. Okay, yes, so if we could share the results, thank you so much. Let's see, we've got 25%. It looks like that's the highest result in natural resources. Yes, so close to my heart. We'll talk a little bit more about that and build on Lisa's excellent comments. Closely followed by climate change, environmental justice, it looks like, with, of course, interests in all of the other areas as well. So thank you, everyone, for sharing that. Next slide, please. So I want to begin by sharing this quote by Nancy Newhall. Conservation is humanity caring for the future, right? And so it is around having a view toward what is that future state that we want and how do we move toward that? Next slide, please. And so this work is very personal. And so I'm going to spend some time today talking about what that calling is, what it might look like for you. And we had a little preview there in the poll responses, certainly. We're going to talk then some more about what the practice involves, and then I'm going to tie them all together. And so This approach that I'm bringing into our conversation today is based on my dissertation research. It was based on inclusive management theory, and it was an international study of public engagement in 12 different countries. And so inclusive management theory includes information, right, and relationships. And my contribution was to bring in stewardship. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about those components today. And then I've also updated that to map in some really great insights from 6 Seconds, the global emotional intelligence community. And so they talk about, and I have a picture right here on my wall to my right, they talk about 3 questions: why we do something, what we do, and then how we do it. So that really encapsulates the essence of what I'm going to cover today. So I'd invite you to take a sheet of paper, if you're taking notes, and make 3 columns. One of them being why, one being what, and one being how, to take notes as we go along. And so I mentioned that this work is very personal, and I want to encourage you to think about what your why is. So my why is about my family, and it's about what I hold dear. You see my family there on the left. My dad, at 65 years old, started a recycling project in the community that funded summer camp scholarships for kids who couldn't afford to go to school. So it's never too late to start in this work. And I think about that. My dad is a huge source of inspiration to me personally. So I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing it for my kids. You can see them there in the middle, and for their kids, right? So that they can go and have those wonderful experiences in my beloved Adirondack Mountains of New York, where I've been camping since I was 3 years old. So if you would just pause for a minute and write in the chat window, what is it that you believe? I've posted what my core elements of my why are, that I believe that when people have an individual connection to nature, the world is a kinder, more just, more equitable, more sustainable place. So just take a moment. Is there something that really speaks to you about what calls you to do this work? It's something you can't not do. You post that in the chat window. We'll just pause for a few seconds to let folks do that. Joshua has written, for present and future generations. Joanna, my connection to future generations and concern for their well-being. Beautiful. Carol, I believe in equality of all beings and the right to life, freedom, and love. Oh, these are fantastic. Shannon, I believe guiding the youth to value sustainable practices will shape future generations. These are all incredible. Noah, I want my boys to grow up in a better world than I did. Wow. So I really want to encourage you to write these thoughts down and keep them near you. Maybe it's on your desk, on a sticky note, something you put in your wallet, whatever it might be, because this why is going to sustain you when things get challenging, right? When things aren't going the way you want them to go, or there's a policy project that's just hit a bottleneck. So a very, very important thing is to remember our why. Next slide, please. And so this piece of emotional intelligence is important, right? Lisa spoke to it when she mentioned what is our spark, right? That's our why. That's the emotional piece. The logic is important. We know from Plato that the ethos, the ethics of what we do, as well as the pathos, the emotions that underpin our actions, have everything to do with moving us forward. And so I really like to think about this work as something that we do as servant leaders. The work of Meg Wheatley and Robert Greenleaf really pointed us to those attributes of servant leadership that we can bring in to our why, right? And then really giving a view toward what's the contribution that we can make. And I'll share with you a little bit of some advice from an expert in the field. This is Leonard Adler. He is the founder of the Green Jobs Network. If you don't subscribe to his free newsletter, I really encourage you to. Monthly, he posts Green Jobs. The latest issue has 150 jobs from around the country. I won't read all of this. It's some really good insights here. But the last thing Leonard said to me when I spoke to him recently and asking for advice for this session today is he said, most of all, remember why you are doing it. What is the future state you are committed to in 10 years, in 20 years? Next slide, please. And so pointing toward that, we're going to move into the what. What contribution do you want to make? I mean, when you think about the SDGs, I think that's a wonderful framework to really consider that. And we know that everything is related to everything else, thinking from a circular perspective, of course. And so when you think about some of the issues that we work on, all of these goals listed at the top are related to well-being and health, right? Which are among the social and economic goals. So knowing the work that we do is important, and going back to our why, thinking about, okay, given what calls us, what do we want to do to make a change, to make things better? And so I'm going to just touch on some specifics, what I call 6 key takeaways to think about. How do we put that what into action? How do we make that contribution? And I'll share with you that there are parallels here between career management and the practice of advocacy, the practice of policy making, the practice of having that green job, right? So first of all, you want to have a plan. You know, that great saying, a dream without a plan is just a fantasy, right? So you want to have some concrete steps that you've established to move forward. And so you're thinking about that current state and that future state, right? What are the strengths that you bring? What are the kinds of roles that interest you, the organizations that are a fit for you? Where can you be a part of moving the industry forward or that particular field? You want to have a go-to-market strategy for your career. It's the same thing, you know, how are you going to put that campaign together that Lisa spoke to? What are the mechanics of that? And then looking to continuous improvement, right? Once you've achieved, you've gotten that job, you know, what's next for you? How can you continue to develop yourself professionally? Just the way that you would with a policy goal, right? You've accomplished that threshold. Let's take that to the next level. Secondly, and Lisa spoke to this a little bit too, staying up on market trends and needs, identifying what are those big challenges that are out there that organizations need help with, being able to engage people on a community level about important food issues or endangered wildlife issues, whatever it might be. You really need to know what the latest is on that particular subject area. And here's some advice from Corey Ramsden with Solar United Neighbors, a really wonderful nonprofit doing impressive policy work on the local and state level having to do with solar. And he's identified here several policy trends in that field. I won't touch on them all. You can go back and read them. A couple of them that I thought were really especially exciting to me personally, the agricultural and rural use of land for solar, and that policy is key to resolving land use conflicts, right? Making those projects look and feel better to people. And solar advocacy, moving toward aggregating independent points on the grid. So a lot of really good opportunities. You need to know about these trends and be conversant in them, not only to speak with a potential employer, but when you speak with peers and you do networking, that builds your the awareness of you as an expert, as a contributor, right? And it helps you get referrals. Somebody says, wow, that person really knows this part of our field. I'd feel comfortable recommending them for a position or introducing them to a colleague who might have an opening. Defining your brand. And so to that point, right, you want to really understand what it is you want to be known for and hone that. I mean, I've mentioned I have experience doing a lot of different things in our field. policy level experience, land use, stormwater, sewers, climate change. I've taught policy at the graduate level in a university. And so really understanding and emphasizing those things that really draw you back. And so that you're known for that. So knowing your own intrinsic motivation, right? I'm very involved in forestry issues as well. And so those things bring my why into what keeps me moving forward and building that brand and that awareness of who I am. And another phrase that's, it's being empowered about our career and the contribution that we want to make. And so you can see some of the research at the bottom from Parsons, Eggins, and Marston. It's really kind of having an understanding of what's that desired sense of myself. Who do I want to be as a leader, right? What's that representation in the world as I look for a job, but also my own professional identity, right? What's true for me and how do I want to put that into action? Volunteering and pro bono work. Lisa talked about several great opportunities to do this. And I can tell you it's been a key part of the career pivots that I've made. I'm on my third career. I began communications, then I moved into urban planning, and now I'm an executive career coach and a talent development consultant working with organizations, in addition to my coaching work with individuals. And so use that opportunity to develop your expertise and your base of experience. And so for me, it all began with becoming a tree steward, which is a volunteer in my community, planting, caring for, and advocating for trees. They asked me at the end of the training program, they said, wow, you seem really, really so interesting. Would you lead our training committee? And I said, sure. That eventually led to me connecting with Leaders in Energy, where I became head of training and development for them. We've developed a Green Career Momentum small group coaching program for people who want to get into this field. And that led to co-founding the Nature Plus Emotions Working Group with 6 Seconds, which kind of brings all of my passions together, all of these 3 things. So let me just pause here for a minute and ask, what is one contribution that you can make or that you're making right now in support of your why? Shannon says she's volunteering in classrooms teaching environmental literacy to K to 5 students. Excellent, Shannon. That's wonderful. And it might be something you haven't started doing yet. Sophia, lobbying my local HR with the Citizens Climate Lobby. Excellent, great organization doing important work. Sina is a founding member of the National Student Energy Consortium. Excellent. Jonathan, advocating for the GND with the Sunrise Movement. This is inspiring to see, right? You guys are already doing work in this field, and that is a great thing to list in your resume. It doesn't matter whether it's paid or not. People want to know, yeah, you have a commitment to doing this work. So wonderful, wonderful examples. And so let me wrap this section up with the point of always be networking, right? You really want to develop the relationships. You want to connect with other people and again, be conversant in these issues and challenges. It's going to become more important as you get senior in your career to have relationships. So you really want to spend some time doing that from the get-go. And here are some great professional organizations as well. Look for service opportunities there too. I've been involved in the Women's Council on Energy and the Environment, for example. Here are a few others. The Yale School for the Environment webpage has a wonderful list of by category of different organizations you can get involved in. So look for professional groups to get involved in, as well as the community ones. They're important, but the professional networks will help you unlock other career opportunities. So you definitely want to make that part of the mix. Oh, and I'm sorry, one more point here. Assessing the competition. One of the things that I talk with clients a lot is the value of going into LinkedIn or Indeed or one of the other online platforms and identifying, half a dozen, 10 different job opportunities that look really appealing to you. And then you want to make a list. What are the required qualifications that they're looking for? What are the things that are nice to have? Compare that with the ones that you have. Are you seeing some patterns come up? Or look in other people's profiles and do that. Somebody's in a kind of job you want to land. And see, what's similar and what are the gaps, to be mindful of that. And so I'll close by tying these pieces together with how will you get into action? What one step are you willing to take to commit to today, in addition to what you've been doing, that will help you step forward to that future vision that you see for the work that you want to do in our field? Doing advocacy work, it may be some other type of green career. So if you go ahead and post in the chat window, let's just get a sense of what one thing would you commit to doing? Maybe it's working on your resume or going to a networking event here on Zoom. So Shannon has said making professional networking a priority. Excellent. My mentor says relationships are the real work of work. So Mike, using LinkedIn more frequently. That's a good one. Great network. Looking at dream jobs on LinkedIn. Charlene, pursuing a master's in creative writing. Yes, yes. Kristen, making a website. Yes, that's really valuable to do. Highlight your work, your portfolio. Nicholas, looking into joining a green professional organization. Excellent. So beautiful. Love to see these inspiring steps that people are going to take. So let's try to tie all these pieces together, right? One of the things I want to observe is that sometimes I think in our field, we are definitely oriented toward having the plan, which is valuable. You need to have that, right? But there's also an element of planned serendipity here. So you want to do a lot of different things, and some of them will stick and some of them won't, and to be willing to do that as you go forward as a professional, right? And so today we've spoken a little bit about what your why is, what the calling is. What are you here to do in this world that's so needed, right? We've spoken some about your contribution and the practice. And Lisa also highlighted several things that you can do to further hone your craft, right? And I've shared some different insights as well. And then we've talked about the how. How are you going to go forward? What relationship with other people, with this work, with this field, are you willing to step forward on? And so it all goes back to your why. And so as we conclude, I just want to kind of bring it all home, right? And so think about a place that's really special to you. I mentioned the Adirondacks for me, but it could be anywhere. Maybe it's a park. Next slide, please. Or maybe it's a place you go to be by yourself, or a place that's special as you think about time you spend with your family or others, or it's just out being with nature, right? Its majesty and its beauty. So just reminding you the importance of remembering what Jennifer Ninny said. You can't force people to care about our natural environment, but if you encourage them to connect with it, they just might. So I'm happy to talk more about your questions and comments. Here's my contact information. Please reach out to me if I can do anything to support you. Thank you for your time and your contributions today. I'm glad you're part of our field.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So I am going to stop share, and we have about 10 minutes for questions. So please put your questions in the Q&A tab down at the bottom of the Zoom, and I can share with our panelists a couple that have come up already. Let's see. The first one is, do you have any advice for non-STEM undergraduates looking for entry-level work in the climate and environmental action field?
I'm happy to chime in with a thought, and Lisa, I want to hear your thoughts as well. This is something I get from probably about half the people that I work with, and Leonard spoke to this, Leonard Adler, that all roles are needed, and so an organization like the Nature Conservancy, they need people who can do finance, they need people who are excellent communicators to get the message out there about their mission, people who write grants, and a whole range of roles that may be non-STEM related in order to do what they do. So definitely look for those opportunities. They're out there, and you're very needed.
Yeah, I would just add, certainly I agree, Beth. There's so many different opportunities for people with non-STEM backgrounds. I would say communications type roles could be, an area that you look at. You would also have to gain knowledge, of course, on the topical area, climate change, or whatever work that you're working on. So you'd have to gain topical knowledge, but strong writing and communication skills. So maybe the sciences are not your thing, or math or engineering. But if you're perhaps a good writer, a good communicator, you could find roles doing work and maybe policy analysis work. You could be maybe doing work as a writer, influencing people. There could be roles where maybe you're using your creative side, where you're an environmental filmmaker, or something like that, where that is a super powerful role too. There's so much of a need for strong communicators, people who can convey some of these complex topics, right, to all of us, so that people understand what's at stake and how they can be a part of it. And so strong writing and communication skills are very important for that. So if you're not math, science, engineering focused, maybe focus on some of your writing and communication skills. I'll say that those are the skills: writing and public speaking, communication skills. If I had to identify the most important skill set that I would see across the board in just about every single position in the green career field, it's communication skills, writing and public speaking. So there definitely is a place for you.
Great. I second that. At Citizens Climate Lobby, I often look at internship applications, and communication skills is more important than science, I would say. The work we do is advocacy, and that's what we need. All right. So a few people asked this. Let's see. As I begin to approach the job market, I see the organizers and advocates are younger than me. I doubt I can just walk into an upper level position. How do you suggest overcoming that potential ageism situation? I am in early 60s.
Lisa, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. I would say, it's important to think about, what you can bring to the table. So transferable skills, I think, are very important to think about. So maybe you've had kind of a different career path, but it's very important to understand how can you convey what you've done in the past that might put you at an advantage to other people, perhaps, that don't have as much experience. And so thinking about, one exercise that I do with people, so I encourage this, I call it the accomplishments exercise. I ask people to write down maybe 3 to 5 accomplishments in whatever realm. Could be volunteer work, could be internship, could be work, anything like that. So what are 3 to 5 accomplishments that you're really proud of? They don't have to be huge things either, but what have you achieved? What have you made better? And especially if you're applying it to the environmental realm, if there's anything that you can show that's relevant to the environmental field, great. But if it's in another field, that can be just as impressive as well. So if it's that you're someone who can make a process more efficient, you can save a company or organization money, you can bring in dollars, for fundraising or whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be in the environmental realm. But if you can write down 3 to 5 of your accomplishments, really highlight what is that accomplishment? What did you make better? What did you improve? And then quantify it if possible, numbers. You raised money, how much money? $1, was it $10,000? Those sorts of things can really then show you perhaps how you can highlight those experiences on your resume, in informational interviews, in formal interviews, about what you can bring to the table. So I would really encourage something like that to think about what are the skills. I will share later. I think it's on my career resources page. So if you go to greencareeradvisor.com and look under the resources tab, I have a list of top skills that are needed in the environmental field. That's a very good place for people thinking about what skills are important to these employers and what might be transferable. So take a look at that list. I'll try to find it and stick it in the chat here in a minute. But that's a good exercise as well, to look at some common skill sets and figure out, could I convey these in some way in my applications and interviews. So let me find that for you. And you can take other questions if you.
Well, and sure, I concur with Lisa's great recommendations. I also think there's an element here around owning the strengths that you bring to the table in terms of mentoring junior level team members. So if you're probably, I'm in my 50s, if you're probably at a more senior level, you have likely mentored people. You have likely led teams. You've helped them really get to the finish line on an important project. And so to really demonstrate that you're coming in with some management skill sets that can make things easier for the organization, that they don't have to start from scratch. And they can also help with retaining really talented younger team members, right? Because you are helping them to learn their roles and stay connected to the goal that you all have together in that organization. So I'd really lean into that skill set as something that you could bring in addition to your technical or specialized area of expertise.
Thank you. So you both talked about the importance of having a plan to achieve your dreams. What advice do you have for someone who is passionate about environmental issues but hasn't quite figured out what the dream is?
I'll chime in and say, I think this is where volunteering, low risk opportunities like that to really kind of figure out what your passion is. I didn't realize when I became a tree steward that would unlock all of these different things for me. I got a job with a professional association after that because I was just so excited about urban forestry and helping to protect trees and build the canopy in communities around our country. And so I really encourage you to experiment a little bit and see what sticks for you, what really works. And again, it's low risk, so I think it can really uncover some things for you.
I would add too, I'm sorry, I'm just typing up in the chat box, a resource, My Next Move. It's a great tool that you can look at to kind of assess what career might be of interest to you. So you can search by career words, keywords. You can take an assessment to also look at what sort of tasks. There's an assessment that I love to do with clients. It's basically, it's a 60 question assessment looking at, okay, here are 60 different tasks that you might do day to day in a job, or kind of rate how well or how excited would you be to do any of these. And so that can be super helpful in categorizing some job types that might be a good fit for you, of what you might really enjoy doing. It still doesn't necessarily get at the topical area, perhaps, that you might have an interest in. So I I agree with Beth that you would want to do as much volunteering work and internships and exploring opportunities. Don't be afraid to take on something that maybe you're not comfortable doing, or that you think you can't do, or that, so I'll just say a quick aside. My first job out of college, you guys all heard, was working for National Wildlife Federation, giving presentations to, hundreds of people. And guess what? I was mortified of public speaking at the time, but I was so passionate about wanting to make a difference that I thought, oh, I got to do this. I'm going to apply. And when I got the job, I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? But it really, and if I hadn't done that, I think to this day, I would be afraid of public speaking. I do, a lot, I'm doing speaking right now, I do so much of this in my work today. And I feel if I didn't take those risks to try something that I was a little bit uncomfortable with or unsure of, I would not be where I'm at today. So I think that's really important. But look at assessments that can help you understand kind of your skill sets, but also like what you would enjoy doing in a typical day. And that can be super helpful to at least narrow down some areas and types of careers that might be a fit for you. And then, doing the volunteer work to find out, the focus area.
Great. Yes. Value of taking risks. I know we're at the top of the hour, but I do like this question, and it's a quick one. What is one class that you wish you had taken in undergraduate? Or maybe what was the most helpful one you did take?
What a great question. Wow, I have to pause for a minute to reflect on that.
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in and say, while Beth is thinking, I wish I had taken more policy classes. I didn't feel like I was a policy expert going into the grassroots organizing careers. I kind of learned a lot of it, and I did take some policy classes, but I felt, that more would have been helpful. So I'll say that. And my favorite class really was a class on the tropical rainforest ecology. I mean, that was what, as I shared with you, that was what opened up my why and like what I was passionate about. So I think taking electives, if you have that opportunity to take something that you're really interested in, and it's not necessarily part of the required curriculum, but you have a leaning towards it, listen to that. Try to see if you can have opportunities to take coursework outside your field. And having worked with graduate students at Michigan, many of them took courses outside of the School for Environment and Sustainability. They might take an engineering course, or they might take a business course, and those were all very helpful.
I would say for me, I think there are a couple of things. So I was in a program that was a 3-year undergraduate program, which I did because I was paying for my own school. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. And so I had some combined classes. And I remember one that I think really opened the door for me to think about this field. And it actually focused on history in math and science. And we learned about many of the incredible inventions, right? I remember doing a presentation on the work of Mendeleev in this class, and just really interested in what he learned. And so kind of bringing in that scientific perspective and his curiosity and a sense of discovery and really trying to figure something out. And so I wish I had taken more math and science classes, because to that question earlier about how do you get into this field when you don't have a STEM degree, I don't have a STEM degree. My first degree is in communication. In broadcast journalism was my specialty. My second degree is in public communication. How do we put together campaigns and programs to support the public good? And my doctorate is in public affairs, public administration, with an application toward the policy field that we've talked about today. And so I would say I would probably, if I could do it over again, I would have found a way to stay for that 4th year, and I would have had a minor in environmental science.
Great answers. I was also thinking about that, and I had an English major, but the class I remember being really helpful was environmental chemistry, and I learned the basics of like climate change science, air pollution, water pollution. So like I have a basic understanding of that, even though I didn't major in it at that time. All right. Well, thank you both so much. This was really helpful. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and expertise with so much interest in this subject. It's really great to have two experts like you to help us navigate that. So sorry if we couldn't get to more of your questions, but we'll make the recordings available to you, and Beth and Lisa have made their contacts available. So I hope you have a good day and join us for our future Antioch events.
Thank you, Clara. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, everyone.
Be well, everybody.